Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports national columnist since 2003, New York Times best-selling author, joins us on the program. You've been writing about the situation at Northwestern. What issues do you have with this story?
I guess my biggest, if you want to call it an issue, is we just don't really know the full scope of what happened. Northwestern did this 7-month investigation. They get the whistleblower complaint last November. They hire an outside law firm. They spend about 7 months on this, interview 50 plus people, go through all the texts, emails. They're doing player surveys through the years. Sounds very comprehensive for what was going on in the culture of the locker room. And then as a private institution, they don't have to release this document, this investigation, the way you would if you were a public school and this was a public document. So they release an executive summary that has zero details into what actually happened, and let alone kind of the context and the perspectives and things like that. And so no one really knows what the situation was. They suspend, the president suspends Pat Fitzgerald on Friday, says, okay, he's obviously read this whole thing, and says 2-week suspension. I thought that was very naive not to release the whole thing for everyone to see and get out in front of this story. And then the story comes out in the student newspaper and on ESPN that the original complainant is telling his side of the story, which could be 100% accurate and all of that, but we don't have any of the other perspective of the other 50 plus people that shaped the original decision. And once the details of the complainant come out, all of a sudden 3 days later, Pat Fitzgerald's fired. And so I think the rest of us are left to say, I don't truly know. We can assume the worst. We can assume this or that. We don't really know what happened and why on Friday was it good enough for Northwestern to say you're suspended for 2 weeks, and then on Monday you're fired. You're fired. You're done. Get out of here. That's a dramatic switch in 3 days when no real new information had come out.
And that's where I started to go, okay, let me look at the timeline here. Usually Friday, news dump. Here we are in July, and it almost felt like, hey, can we sneak this one by the goalie here? And he's been suspended for 2 weeks. It felt like once we knew he was suspended for 2 weeks, then our curiosity was, well, wait a minute. What gets you suspended for 2 weeks in July and not maybe a couple of games? Or how serious is this? Because nothing changed from Friday to Monday except for Pat Fitzgerald got fired.
Well, yeah, that and some of the details started coming out. And that's why I think Northwestern, I'm not here to say Pat Fitzgerald should or should not have his job, or they acted in the wrong. Maybe they should have fired him on Friday and they made a mistake then and they corrected on Monday. I don't know. I'm just looking at it from afar. We don't know all the details. There is a big report. There is a thorough investigation. Yeah. And they sat there and said, okay, let's give them 2 weeks off in the middle of summer where nothing is happening at Northwestern. If you're going to suspend someone for 2 weeks, these are the 2 weeks to do it. That literally no impact on anything. There's barely any recruiting going on. Go to your lake house, come back in 2 weeks. We're going to implement this stuff. We will root out the culture that's a problem. So they were all in agreement on Friday. And then the details come out. What they should have done, right or wrong, whatever, if it led to this or not, is release the entire report, allow all of the context and perspective to come out. I'm not saying again, the complainant could be 100% accurate, and what is described is troubling and ridiculous and all of those things. But many times with this stuff, you want the full perspective. This is a court case. It's not a criminal court case. It's not a civil court case, but it's in the court of public opinion. Why are we keeping our coach? Why are we firing our coach? What you don't do if you're the school or a defense attorney is ever just let the witness, the complainant, get up and tell his story and then say, we have no questions. We have no opening statement. We have no rebuttal. We have no witnesses, nothing. We're just going to sit here. And that's what Northwestern kind of seeded the narrative in the court of public opinion. And then when it started to shift, perhaps rightfully,
Yeah.
They all of a sudden change their mind and go to the drastic step of firing. So I thought I don't know that the result is wrong. I just know the way they got to it is highly questionable and was botched. And so maybe again they should have fired him on Friday. Why did the president not fire him on Friday? And then on Mondays to say, "Oh my, I'm just so troubled by this. This guy has to go." Instead of saying, "Look, whatever justification they came up with on Friday, I assume he's been here 17 years. We can stop hazing very quickly. This isn't something that's like impossible to stop. You can stop it right away. It'll never happen on the 2023 team. Instead, it's just like he's got to go." So really awkward, clumsy effort on how they got to this. Maybe it's the right decision, maybe it's the wrong one. Neither I nor pretty much anyone other than the president of Northwestern has any idea about the full context of the story.
Yeah, and the cynic in me, if he's 11-1 last year, not 1-11, he's not as vulnerable, it feels like. Also, did coaches know about this? Assistant coaches, the new head coach, the interim head coach, players, seniors, juniors, were they culpable in this? Is there sexual assault that's in here? Did they violate Northwestern's code of conduct? I mean, there's a lot to unravel here other than it felt like, hey, 2 weeks, let's move on. Fire the coach, let's move on. It just feels like this is a ball of yarn, Dan, that is just going to keep on unraveling here and might get even uglier.
Until you release the full report, it's going to keep dripping out. That was extremely naive by Northwestern to assume to just say, "Hey guys," and look, when you suspend someone like Pat Fitzgerald on a Friday in the summer on the week of July 4th, it's a news dump to try to hide the story, right?
Yeah.
It's such an obvious news dump that it becomes the story.
It becomes obvious.
Nobody is getting fooled.
Yeah.
Like, wait, Pat Fitzgerald is getting suspended? What is going on here? Oh, we just finished. Don't worry. Just calm down. Let everyone enjoy their weekend, cook some hamburgers, and we'll be fine. No, everyone's going to go, wait a minute. And the naivete of thinking the complainant, who is not bound by any confidentiality, is going to just sit there and say, "Okay, I'm good with this. I definitely will not talk to the media about what So this complainant saying, I didn't get what I wanted out of this, so I'm going to ramp it up, and I'm going to tell my story was not told in this executive summary. It just said there was some things, and we'll just move on." He's saying, "Hey, heck no, I'm going to tell my story," and good for him. He has that right. What he went through, the story he told, and what he went through, he deserves to tell his story. So he goes out and tells it, and now, all right, we got to go. Yeah. And then you sit there and say, well, they won 4 games in 2 years. But then on the other side, they're trying to raise money for a new $800 million football stadium. And Pat Fitzgerald is extremely popular and connected with So how much did all of these things, did that play in on Friday? We can't fire this guy. We got to build this stadium. Or was it now, well, he wasn't winning anyway. Nobody knows anything. And everyone's now curious. America loves a mystery. And Northwestern created a mystery on something that perhaps was a simple solution or perhaps not. But eventually this report has to come out because perhaps there is context. Perhaps there is other witnesses. Perhaps it gets worse. I don't know. I don't know what's in the report. Maybe it looks even worse and you go, how the heck did you not fire him on Friday? Or maybe you read it and go, maybe you give the guy another chance. Northwestern trying to hide by this has done no good on a story that I agree is a ball of yarn that's going to keep going.
Good to talk to you as always, Dan. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Talk to you soon.
That's Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports national columnist and New York Times bestselling author.